Welcome to worship with Eliot Unitarian Chapel. Wherever you're tuning in from, near or far, we are so glad you're here. I am Eliot's lead minister, the Reverend Barbara Gadon, and I hope that this is a service that nurtures your spirit. If you are new to Eliot Chapel, we are an intentional community that welcomes all races, all genders, all sexual orientations. We welcome people of all creeds and beliefs and all economic circumstances. Our vision is to create a just world through vibrant, beloved community. If you would like to learn more about us, learn more about this congregation and connect with us in real time, please look for information at the end of the service. Again, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Hello, my name is Stephen Bain. Our opening words are from Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those who have gone before us and the hands of those who will come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of all those who have loved and the larger circle of all creatures, all of us passing in and out of life, all of us moving in a dance to a music so vast and so subtle that none of us can hear it, except in fragments. We hallow this time by lighting the lamp of our heritage. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive that which fills it. Each day we must carry it, and when we can, we must pour from it, that others may be sustained.
Please join me in singing hymn number 319, Ye Earthborn Children of a Star.
Children of a star amid the depths of space, the cosmic wonder from afar within your mind's embrace. Look out with awe upon the art of countless living things, the counterpoint of part with part as nature's chorus sings. Beyond the wonder you have wrought within your little time, the knowledge won, the wisdom sought, the ornaments of rhyme.
Our reading is from Unitarian minister John Dietrich's pamphlet, Humanism, which he wrote in 1934. If we live in a great impersonal universe with no friend to guide us, it matters tremendously how we conduct ourselves, for we are actually the makers of human destiny. We are not simply individuals who have a beginning in life and an ending. We are links in the endless chain of life. To us has been committed all that life has won from chaos in all the ages past. Only through us can that trust from the past be transmitted to the future.
Hi, I'm Steve Mennerick. Every month, Eliot Unitarian Chapel shares our offering with a local organization that helps promote our mission of courageous love and compassionate action. In August, we're sharing our offering with the Kirkwood Area Every Child Promise, or CATCH-UP for short. Among Eliot's stated goals is to create a more just society, that is, to promote equity. Ketchup was started a few years ago in response to a racial equity report issued to the Kirkwood School District. It's my firm conviction, grounded in science, that if we want to achieve equity in society, it has to start with early childhood, even before kindergarten. And that's just where Ketchup's mission lies. Ketchup engages with our community's youngest learners and their families to make sure every child in the school district gets the start that they need during a critical formative time during those children's development. Ketchup helps with preschool scholarships and with information and assistance about resources in the community. It provides access to Promise Place, which is a clothing and supply closet for young children and their families. And the one thing that I'm probably most excited about is that Ketchup is not standalone, rather it's wraparound. It connects with other wonderful local resources, including Kirk Care, Parents as Teachers, the Kirkwood Public Library, the Magic House, other faith organizations, the school district, businesses in the local community, all to provide a truly holistic support for children and their families. There are instructions for giving on your screen. Please give generously, and thank you.
Out of the stars swung the earth, and life rose up to love. The words of Robert Weston hold the whole story. That's all my cosmology, everything I believe in a nutshell. Out of the stars swung the earth, and life rose up to love. It's a 14 billion year story, and the love part came to us very recently, but of course, love is the part of the story that we pay the most attention to. It's the part we can add to, the part that most affects us, and the part that we can use to affect what comes next. Humanism is a vast subject, and my grasp of it is not deep. Today, I am mostly reviewing and summarizing two books from the Unitarian Universalist Press. Dr. William Murray is the author of Reason and Reverence, Religious Humanism for the 21st Century, published in 2007. Dr. Murray led a UU congregation for many years as its minister, and later was the president of Meadville Lombard Theological School, our Midwestern Unitarian Universalist Seminary in Chicago. I also read Humanist Voices in Unitarian Universalism, a collection of 24 essays by UU humanists, each bringing a unique perspective to the practice of humanism in the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. The editors are once again Dr. William Murray and Kendall Gibbons, who leads All Souls Unitarian Church in Kansas City and is a past president of the UU Ministers Association. She writes delightfully, and the two of them have edited a delightful book. These little volumes are both short, and I can recommend both of them. Humanism has roots beginning in the Renaissance. By the mid-19th century, some philosophers had rejected the idea of gods, and the scientific findings of Darwin, added to Renaissance astronomical discoveries, cast doubt on, quote, and when I say quote, I am ordinarily quoting Dr. Murray, cast doubt on, quote, the Greek idea adopted by modern Christendom that human beings consist of a transient physical body inhabited by a non-corporeal eternal soul, unquote. Modern humanism began to take shape in the 1980s and 1990s. A man known as the Great Agnostic, Robert Ingersoll, lectured all over America speaking of the religion of humanity. He said, quote, if the naked are clothed, people will clothe them. If the hungry are fed, people must feed them. There is no evidence that God ever interfered in the affairs of humanity. The hand of earth is stretched uselessly toward heaven. In vain the shipwrecked cry to God. The frost freezes, the fire burns, the wrong triumphs, the good suffer, and prayer dies upon the lips. A robust humanistic attitude entered Unitarianism in the 1920s. In 1933, a group of humanists, including Unitarian and Universalist ministers, published the Humanist Manifesto, which declared itself the first statement of a new religion. The manifesto denied the existence of the supernatural, either as a deity or in the form of an eternal human soul. The universe is all there is, and it is indifferent to human concerns. The document rejected the notion that there is some universal, purposeful goodness. Instead, the manifesto affirmed the worth and dignity of every person, called for a commitment to human betterment, and further called for humanity to take full responsibility for history and also for what will happen or can happen in the future. The document called for a socialized economy and a more equitable distribution of wealth. The manifesto did not deify or aggrandize humanity, nor has humanism ever done so. The new religion never really caught on, partly because of its endorsement of socialism, followed by revelations of Stalin's hideous bloodletting. Dr. Murray points out that the manifesto also ignored the role of emotion in human life, the existence of evil and pain, the importance of community in religious life, and it was too individualistic. The second Humanist Manifesto, published in 1973, made few improvements, and the third manifesto in 2003 still did not outline a set of practices that would create satisfying religious experience. Within the last 20 or 30 years, a movement called religious naturalism made humanism less centered on humans and added elements of awe and a vocabulary of reverence. But it took a humanistic feminism to round out Dr. Murray's vision. Feminism teaches that to be human is to be in relationship. To be fully human means taking our bodily and emotional existence seriously, and feminism reminds us that people can be very badly hurt. Dr. Murray has used all these sources to create a life stance, he calls it, that he calls humanistic religious naturalism. Humanistic religious naturalism. Dr. Murray, or somebody, has got to give it a new name. That's what it's called now, and it is the faith he preaches as a UU minister. He believes it is a viable alternative to Orthodox religions, and he says it is the, quote, basic theological perspective, unquote, of most UUs. As you listen to my explication of humanistic religious naturalism, you will hear a lot of what you have already heard at Eliot Chapel. The authors I read agree that the purpose of a humanist faith is not to disprove God, but to create new ideas for a religion that will inspire and support change in the individual and in society. Nevertheless, the proponents of this new humanism have some sharp criticisms of Orthodox Christianity, ranging from a sarcastic reference to, quote, the psychopath in the sky, unquote, to Rebecca Parker's discernment of, quote, a pattern of divine child abuse, unquote, to a feminist view that Dr. Murray adopts, that belief in an all-powerful deity glorifies power, domination, punishment, and male superiority, and demands as our response obedience and submission, perhaps even submission to punishment and violence. Authoritarian religion is seen as a real threat to democracy as it seeks to eliminate the separation of church and state. David Bumbaugh sees danger when orthodoxy prioritizes dogma over compassion. Kenneth Patton says that orthodoxy discourages learning the difference between how we want things to be and how things really are. Everyone needs to, quote, unhitch their brains from their longings, unquote. What is more, Christianity can relieve its adherents of responsibility for both past and future, attributing worldly events to God's will. Dr. Murray refers to denominational surveys indicating that the largest group of UUs call themselves humanist, atheist, or agnostic. He notes that even those who call themselves theists describe God in naturalistic terms. God is creativity in the universe, the power for good, mystery. God is love. God is the spirit in each human. He sees only a fine line between this kind of theism and humanistic religious naturalism. He begs UU atheists, humanists, and agnostics to ignore or forgive the use of the G word in our services, saying we should be glad that the meaning our friends assign to the word is closer to what humanists believe than to traditional theism. I have previously made a similar plea, and I endorse Dr. Murray's plea today. I don't think the word God is helpful either, but let's just let it go. Myths, stories, and parables are important in all religions. Dr. Murray adopts the epic of evolution as the story for humanistic religious naturalism. I began my talk with the shortest version of that story that I know. But the story is powerful. The Big Bang and formation of the cosmos, the cooling of Earth, the appearance of life, biological evolution, and it goes on, including everything that has emerged from the Earth and from us, and that shall emerge: culture, societies, morality, art. The story has many chapters. David Bumbaugh says the story calls us out of ourselves so that we can see ourselves as part of a cosmos. The story is so great that it humbles us. It is beautiful and it inspires reverence. We see all of life as one family. We are astonished to be alive. The story forges strength in us when it makes us recognize our responsibility for the future. The story is a basis for treating other species with greater respect. It is undeniable and therefore universal, and it is ours uniquely as humanistic religious naturalists to relate it. A feminist ethic emerges from the story: cooperation, caring, compassion, love. And at the ending of the story, we can get goosebumps because we will never be able to tell the ending. What is ahead of us is the unknown. Chet Ramos says that, quote, all scientific knowledge that we have of this world or will ever have is an island in the sea of mystery. The more we learn about the vastness of space and time, the more we are in awe. The idea of mystery is important in the new humanism, not as a kind of shorthand when we don't want to say God, but literally as a source of awe. David Breeden, who did his intern ministry at Eliot Chapel, says, mystery signifies that which is not known, not that which may be thought of in a foggy manner, unquote. A central value and moral principle of humanistic religious naturalism is justice. Quote, the pursuit of social, economic, and racial justice and the eradication of all forms of exploitation and oppression are central to the vision of a better world, Dr. Murray says. This has been expressed as loving one's neighbor as oneself, extended to all persons. We need a sense of our connections to all humanity and our responsibilities to others. Getting to this life stance can be a bigger problem in the United States than elsewhere. American individualism, largely embodied in law, says that the rights of the individual, with some exceptions, are superior to the good of the larger group or the rights of a community. And Americans have internalized this individualism. UUs in particular are unwilling to give up individual viewpoints and freedoms. Dr. Murray sees individualism as a real threat to American society. He believes that capitalism is the best form of economy, but says the humanistic ethic calls for big changes in capitalism. He says that our rampant consumer capitalism is dehumanizing. We are manipulated. Even the consumer is a commodity to be exploited. And the driving principle behind the economy is constant growth, requiring ever more consumption. Humanism has always seen and still sees specific inequities with specific remedies. The coming of social justice would mean an end to race, sex, and gender discrimination, better wages, better educational, health insurance, and housing opportunities, and a more equitable distribution of wealth. Dr. Murray says, quote, for 1% of the population to have over 40% of the wealth is obscene, unquote. Many of us agree. He goes on, quote, there is no moral justification for 20% of the population to have 85% of the wealth, unquote. Well, a good number of us are probably in that 20%, aren't we? But I still think Dr. Murray is right. It isn't fair. There are all kinds of reasons, not of my own making, why I am better off than many others. I am willing to share. Humanistic religious naturalism wants to help people find a balance between individualism and commitment to the common good. This work is hard. To discharge our responsibility, Dr. Murray says, requires advocacy, not just charitable deeds and donations, and especially not donations to private universities, museums, and symphonies, all of which are institutions that exist primarily to benefit people who already have money in education. We must form associations and coalitions of associations in order to be heard. Otherwise, he says, our voice will be ignored. Ethics demands that we learn how to gather and exercise political power. Humanism is religious in this way as well, helping its adherents find meaning and purpose in life. There are purposes that are excluded: sensuality, unreasonable wealth accumulation. Humanism values commitment to a cause outside and greater than oneself, something that contributes to human or planetary well-being. This could take many forms, of course. When Orthodox believers look quickly at humanism, they often contend that without a God, there is no basis for morality. Dr. Murray says that morality emerges from a reverence for all life. The existence of the ocelot is more important than cheap beef for my grill. The survival of the orangutan is more important than cheap Indonesian palm oil for American chocolate bars. And we just don't want to live in a world where people steal, murder, lie, and covet. Therefore, we do not steal or kill. We believe it is immoral to commit adultery or to deceive. We give up coveting the in-ground pool, the BMW, the jet ski, a pleasure home, another trip to Europe, right? We strive to be good, not because we are threatened or bribed with varieties of a potential afterlife, but because it is good to be good. Our norms of right and wrong have developed over hundreds of generations and contain wisdom that humanistic religious naturalism should draw upon. The old moral principles were not handed down from above. They are all grounded in and emergent from human experience. Those principles have evolved and will continue to evolve. A reverence for all life can begin with love between individual humans, Dr. Murray says. He agrees with Erich Fromm that love is actions, not just a feeling in the heart. If we tutor students in need of tutoring or volunteer at a homeless shelter, these are acts of love. Dr. Murray speaks of what he calls the ethics of responsibility, another feminist ethic. The ethical duty is defined as what is best in a given situation, remembering our responsibilities to others with whom we are in relationship, acknowledging their claims on us. In contrast with the patriarchal emphasis on rules and rights and duties, this is an ethic of care. We should act in the way that is most fitting to promote the well-being of the other person, group, nation, or species. Second, reverence for life demands an ethic of work for social justice between groups in our country and in ending the terrible inequities in wealth between nations. Dr. Murray notes that poverty is not just the deprivation of material goods, but also undercuts an individual's sense of their own worth and dignity, and influences the opinion of others about that person's worth and dignity. Social justice work includes working for the spread and proper operation of democracy. Democracy is threatened by corporate interests, which make huge contributions to political candidates and fund lobbyists, all in the interest of profit. Dr. Murray goes so far as to say that America is now a plutocracy. And he notes that the greatest threats to personal freedoms are poverty, malnutrition, and a lack of education. 177 years ago, Charles Dickens called these evils want and ignorance, and they are still with us. Reverence for life also leads to a sense of our trusteeship for the earth. All of nature is sacred to the religious naturalist, and preserving it is a religious act. To discharge our responsibility for the earth's health, we must work to stop overproduction and overconsumption, especially of fossil fuels. We must support efforts to contain population growth and promote birth control. Dr. Murray says that we can often find the moral choice by the good old method of putting ourselves in another's shoes. This might involve abandoning our class bias and our religious bias. In interactions with our political opponents, it will involve sympathy for their weaknesses and an allowance for their circumstances and hurts and deprivations, which are all unknown to us. The humanist take on evil and sin is really interesting. It is essentially a confession of original sin, deriving not from the act of our grandmother Eve, but because, as Robert Ardrey said in his book African Genesis, quote, "We were born of risen apes, not fallen angels, and the apes were armed killers besides," unquote. We are all naturally inclined to promote self-interest. And this self-interest is at the root of our failures. According to UU Minister Richard Gilbert, quote, "The line between good and evil runs right through the middle of each human heart," unquote. We try to foster life and be a benefit to the world, and we will often fail. We must try to minimize our destructive words and actions. We can consider what the consequences will be of our choices and our goals. Sin consists of words or actions that alienate us from others or from our best selves. Words or actions that are destructive to the well-being of another person or a community. Common sins are pride, egocentrism, and the desire for power over others. Pride and arrogance are the assertion of authority, expecting obedience or agreement. Greed and avarice lead to the exploitation of other human beings. Apathy means you have no sense of the suffering of others, or you sense it and stand idly by. And there are still idolatries of a nation, a scripture, a fundamental dogma. Humanistic religious naturalism has ideas about doing church. Of course, we need our church because it is inspiring and comforting to live life alongside others who share our values and to help diminish our sorrows and increase our joys. Membership will help each of us with the religious process of growing and deepening. Church can help us live deeply now with devotion to values other than self-interest. Dr. Murray calls living this kind of life spirituality. Humanistic religious naturalism wants to be a religion for the nones, that growing group of people, skewing young, who are now unaffiliated with a church. David Breeden calls them the post-religious. We can appeal to them, save them, if you will, by providing them with deeper relationships in church than they can find elsewhere. In church, they can grow these relationships in activities as simple as teaching and religious education classes, belonging to covenant groups, and working with other members for social justice. As far as spiritual practices grow, Sharon Welch asks, do these practices and experiences make us more loving? Do these practices and experiences change how we live? Another Unitarian Universalist woman answers, if a theology leads to kindness and generosity, it is good theology. If it does not lead to practical acts of love, it is bad theology. Many of the writers I've learned from emphasize the spiritual practice of awareness of grace. They mean an acknowledgement of great things received without having been earned, great gladness in the things we have, personally and professionally, that we have not created, mindful appreciation of really important things that we got for free. They call this gratitude. I would call it gladness and humility, but I agree that it is an important spiritual practice. I have one big dissatisfaction with Dr. Murray's view. It does not contain an emphasis on the pain of individuals, and it does not seem to appreciate acts of helping by individuals to individuals. I know that time spent in advocacy will help more people in the long run, but people directly helping people provides a more immediate connection and might be more meaningful to current or future members of our church who are more concrete than abstract, who love best one-to-one, not advocate to legislator. Helping one-to-one can be informative and humbling. Some people will not be able to make the mental leaps or or be willing to take the emotional risks required for advocacy. Some people who come to us will be tired. Some among us are tired. I'm tired. I'd rather work with people one-to-one. I don't have much advocacy left in me. And you may have another dissatisfaction with Dr. Murray's vision. It's the liberal agenda. I buy it, you may not. It's demanding and expensive. But we are not expected to be perfect. We are only expected to grow and to strive. One more thing, none of these humanist voices had anything to say about humor. I think laughter is holy. For one thing, it can be my heart's defiance when something goes wrong, large or small. And if anybody wants my list of movies that can be used in comedy therapy, let me know. So here are the basics Dr. Murray says we must remember about the emerging religion of humanistic religious naturalism if we want it to be the religion of the future. Human beings have no supernatural component. We are natural and responsible for preserving the natural world. We must keep up with science and let it inform our teachings, and we will blend reason with reverence, with feelings of awe, with warm hearts and respectful acts. Our religion must affirm the values that transform minds and hearts from self-centeredness to the sense of being part of a larger sacred whole, values that will inspire us to act from a larger perspective than our own interests. We must live with gratitude, but with eyes open to evil and sin. David Bumbaugh encourages us to live richly with dark realities. Kendall Gibbons says we should live as if we are capable of loving beyond measure. Please join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. As we have been taught, you may close your eyes, plant both feet on the floor, straighten your spine, and follow your breath. I have received much that I have not earned. For thousands of years, there has been kindness and love, and so I have been taught kindness and love. There has been wide sacrifice and work for many generations that support my life and my work. I am glad for the fire within me that drives me and keeps me strong and lets me laugh. I respect the river of time that limits me and hurries me. I confess that I was angry and then I was unkind. I was frightened and then I was unfair. I resolve to show and to use what is best in me. I resolve to push against the parts of me I am not proud of. I resolve to have the humility to ask for help when I need help. Let me see another and ask silently one time each day, what is the best way I can love you today? Let me look today for my own pain and the pain of another and ask, how can I help today?
Please join me in singing hymn number 140, Hail the Glorious Golden City.
Hail the glorious golden city, pictured by the seers of old. Everlasting light shines o'er it, wondrous things of it are told. Wise and righteous men and women dwell within its gleaming wall. Wrong is banished from its borders, justice reigns supreme o'er all. We are builders of the task divine. All must aid alike to carry forward one sublime design. And the work that we have builded, oft with bleeding hands and tears, oft in error, oft in anguish, will not perish with our years. It will live and shine transfigured in the final reign of right. It will pass into the splendors of the city of the light.
Our closing words are from Nancy Wood. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand, and I will hold on to yours, even when we have gone away from each other. Be well.